Good day, and welcome to another United Swiss Weekly Wraps. I'm Viv Governor, and as usual, what we'll do is we'll go over some of the stories of the week that affect you and your investments going forward. We'll do three mainstream stories and do one tech wrap up at the end. Our mainstream stories this week are going to be the UAW strike, the auto worker strike in the US, US inflation, and finally we'll talk a bit about ESCOM. And in our AI/tech segment, we're going to be discussing the listing of ARM Holdings on the NASDAQ this week. So let's just start up with the automobile strike. So the US automobile strike is, I think, a significant economic event. We've had strike action being threatened in the past this year. I talked in detail about the UPS strike, where workers came out with an incredible deal. For those that don't recall, the current deal as it stands that they've signed right now means that in 5 years' time, a full-time driver at UPS will be earning $170,000 a year in salary and benefits. Cost the company $170,000 a year. That's roughly 3.5 million rands a year. Okay, that's about 250,000 rands a month as a driver, almost 300,000 rands a month. So it's a huge salary as a driver. Look, I mean, it's not as simple as you're just going to get a job as a driver. Apparently, there's a 5-year waiting list for workers in UPS. So you start off at the bottom and then you kind of work your way up. And after 5 years, and if you basically keep your nose clean and do your job well, you get to be one of these drivers. And that's fair enough. I think that's a reasonable thing. If it's a career, it's a well-paid job, and if you basically are spending 5+ years at a company, some progression like this is obviously a good thing. But as you can imagine, 3.5 million rands a year is an incredible salary. Even in the US, it's more than double the average US salary. So it's an incredibly good result for UPS. And auto workers are going on strike for something similar. I mean, we mentioned in the past as well. There's also strike actions happening, for instance, in that entertainment industry, etc. But I think the big one we're talking about right now is the auto worker strike, because it is also being driven by some incredibly strong demands. To some extent, the writer's strike is being driven by adaptations to technology, and these guys are kind of trying to preserve what they already have. The auto workers want to try and improve the situation to some extent. So a bit of history. In the 2008 financial crisis, the major automakers, the Ford, GM, Chrysler, etc., were all in big trouble. Only Ford was managed to get out of this without government assistance, like in terms of bailout, but the others needed it, and they also needed their workers to step in and help them out with regards to taking pay cuts, etc., to preserve those jobs. Now it's basically 15 years later, and these companies are now incredibly profitable. I think they made about $250 billion in profits over the last few years. So that's a huge amount of profitability, but they have not gone back and relooked at those concessions made by the workers. So what the workers want now is they want to come back in and they want to get some of the clawback, some of the stuff that they had lost. They want wage increases roughly about a third. There's some more extreme requirements, like for instance a 32-hour work week. So basically 4 days a week, working. And if you do work the 5th day, it's overtime, which is a big deal for these workers because they do basically get overtime. There's a couple of other things there in place. And why is this important? Well, what the US understand is the US is mostly a services economy, but there's still a significant manufacturing sector. And of all the manufacturing the US does, the biggest part of it is in automobiles. If we do have a strike action going on, and it basically lasts as long as the writer's strike, which has been going on, I think, for like 4 or 5 months so far, you would have the US go into a recession. It's that significant in terms of their GDP. It is a very, very large part of their overall, manufacturing base. And like I said, even the manufacturing is not the biggest thing in that country. It's still significant. So if this thing becomes a significant drawn-out strike, expect an impact to happen on the US economy. So what is the situation at the moment? Well, I think the numbers given out is over $1 billion a week the automobile makers will be losing if the strike action does go about. The workers have built up a war chest. They've collected dues, etc., to basically survive about, say, 3 months or so. So they have the ability to basically survive 3 months and hold out from the workers, from the company. The company, like I said, we're talking about $1 billion a week. In 3 months' time, that's going to be tens of billions of dollars. So what's going to be happening here is that right now the strike action just started the last couple of days or so. There's obviously negotiations happening. We are likely to see the Biden administration intervene here and try to do something about the impasse between the two parties. That's one of the things government does do. But I just want to highlight a couple of points here. Firstly, one of the reasons these guys are going on strike is not just the fact that they want to claw back some of those gains. They are also seeing some technological changes happening, and it's coming forward, very, very fast. And that's electrical vehicles, EVs. Well, the thing you must understand about EVs is that even though they are more technologically advanced in inverted commas, they are simpler to make. It's far simpler to make an electric vehicle than to make an internal combustion engine. You basically have, for motors, for the wheels, you have like a battery, and then you put a chassis on it, and that's basically it. That's an EV. Whereas with a internal combustion engine, it's far more complicated. And what this does mean is that if EV is going to be the dominant form of new vehicles, expect the number of workers employed by the big car makers in the US to be dramatically cut. This may be the last time these workers are going to be able to actually step up and basically demand the kind of things they want from the companies, because in a few years' time, you're going to be finding a lot of them being let go, them trying to keep their jobs. And in that scenario, there'll be incredible power in the hands of the company. So they're trying to get that particular thing done now while they still have that power. Next thing to understand is that for multiple political reasons, the person leading the United Auto Workers is quite a radical individual. He is come out and talked about trying to destroy the economy of the billionaires and that kind of stuff. So he's looking beyond just this particular strike. He's trying to create some kind of workers, laborers kind of movement happening here, and that could be something interesting, because that actually might prolong the strike, because he might not be able to just look at the interests of his workers, but maybe say, okay, let's go longer to get more concessions that are good for the entire population as opposed to just my workers. And so, yeah, that's a big thing in the US. Next thing is US inflation came out this week. US inflation came out 3.7, expected 3.6. We still see a drop in the core number to about 4.3 from 4.7. But these numbers are all well above 2, significantly above 2. US inflation bottomed out at about 3% and now is about 3.7, like I said. This is consumer price inflation. And I do think that what's really troublesome about this is that, like I said many times before, you're not going to find the US Fed coming in to basically try and cut interest rates while, firstly, inflation is above its target and increasing. It's going to be very difficult with that. If you even had a pause, if you had inflation dripping down, but slower than you wanted, but yeah, you can live with that. You can't have inflation rising and then say, okay, I'm going to be cutting interest rates. And what's happened now is you've seen there's roughly a 40 to 50% chance of a rate hike between now and the end of the year. That's obviously a disappointing change. There'd been a hope that we had hit peak interest rates already. And this move is going to be quite, I think, troublesome for the economy into the next year. What's happened in the US economy so far is that people have been able to hold off buying new houses or rolling debt, etc. Because, high interest rates means that you buy a new house or you roll your debt, this interest rate, your interest payments are going to be significantly higher. So you'd rather just stick with your current payment rates and just hold steady. That can only last for so long. You are going to have to roll debts over. You are going to have to basically look at some turnover in the housing market, and that's going to come along with much higher home loan rates, much higher interest rates, and that's going to actually have a negative impact on the economy. And if we are further down the line, we're pushing the possibility of rate cuts much further down the line, people are going to have to basically finally start to feel some of that pain of those rate hikes that have occurred in the past. And so, yeah, this is really negative news. That being said, the market did not react that negatively to it. The market basically remains reasonably range bound at the current moment. But I do think that if we do see another rate hike coming through, and we do see inflation ticking up again for the next couple periods, the market will have to react to this. And finally, in terms of mainstream stories, we'll talk about ESCOM. We were threatened with level 7 this week. ESCOM has come to a point right now where Obviously for the longest time we've talked about the fact that the corruption, etc., at the company has, been the main, cause of problems here. I have come to the conclusion, I'm starting to come to the conclusion rather, that it's not just corruption. There's been such damage to the institution that the capacity of the institution to basically do its function has been diminished. Not just about people stealing, but people being unable to do the jobs. If they wanted to do the jobs properly, they may not be able to. There's been such incompetent individuals and people out of their depth, basically put in positions of power at ESCOM, through to political favor, etc., that I seriously don't know if that institution is up to scratch, even if you were able to get rid of that corruption, which we have not been able to do, by the way. And why is this? Some examples we'll be talking about this here. Firstly, we are looking at level 7 after having a reasonably quiet winter. The reason winter was quiet was not because we had a huge uptick in terms of efficiency at ESCOM, just because ESCOM usually delays winter maintenance. It makes perfect sense. People die of cold more often than people die of heat in this country. Winter is pretty bad. If they were not able to put some kind of power through the system or reduce the amount of load shedding they had, you could have seen, some serious tragedies happening. So it kind of makes sense for them to basically delay, maintenance during that period. But now the maintenance is coming due. And now we're going into a period where maintenance is coming due. We've got to catch up on what we've done, and then we've got to take a lot of stuff offline to do that maintenance. And therefore, you do find historically around this time of the year, the amount of load shedding does increase. Now, if this is any indication, last year was the worst period of load shedding. This time of the year was the worst period of load shedding for that year. And this year is probably going to be the same. We're probably going to have the worst period of load shedding from now until the start of next year, the first quarter of next year. And what that could mean is, obviously, we're talking about disruptions to retail, disruptions to water supply, and the general instability that brings into the market. And retail, I think, is very important to look at. If you look at the retailers in the last couple of months here, they've given some numbers as to regards their impact of load shedding on their businesses. And it turns out it's not just the fact that they can't basically turn their own lights on. It's the fact people don't want to travel when there's load shedding because of traffic and safety issues. It's because of the fact that people are now, taking money and spending it on things. For instance, from builders, because we saw that one of the things that was really interesting there was that people were not basically doing new tiles or the house. They were spending the money on boreholes and on solar panels. So that shows that we are seeing, or we will be seeing that impact coming through likely again. If we do see load shedding, like we anticipate being the worst for this year in this particular part of the year. Okay. And now comes our little AI segment where we'll discuss ARM and that new listing and, what our impression is of the company. So ARM makes computer chips. Make computer chips mainly for like phones, but also some other smaller devices. It was bought out by a company called SoftBank roughly 7 years ago. SoftBank basically has been in the tech investment business for a while. They're a really big name there. They've got the reputation because of an investment in Alibaba, where a few $1 million investment turned into a multiple $1 billion investment. Just the kind of same like Das business, buy a bit of 10 cents and a few million, you get maybe hundreds of billions in terms of return over the last couple of decades. And that's what Alibaba found SoftBank found its reputation on. Since that point in time, they've got a lot of money and they've shown themselves to have been lucky, not smart. There's no evidence that they've been doing very well since they've done that. And in fact, a number of the really, silly kind of, innovations or some of the worst, investments the last couple of years, things like Lyft, things like WeWork, etc., have SoftBank's, fingerprints all over them. So one of the things, like I said, they had is ARM. So last year, they tried to sell ARM to Nvidia, but it was blocked by regulators. Valuation is now around 40 billion. Now the listing right now happening is interesting. First of all, we are talking about a company that is going to be only listing by 10% of its shares. It's listing after a long time. It's the biggest IPO we've had in a while in international markets. And what's happened is that we've seen a lot of a lot of interest by investors out there. Many of the other competitors like Nvidia and so on have bought shares into ARM. And so it just listed, in my point of view, like this a day or so ago, and the share price ran up 25% on the day. Now you would think, okay, this is a great story. It's going to be the next tech giant, etc., etc. I don't think so. I think, in fact, even at the opening listing of about $50 billion, it was probably overvalued. I think probably the real valuation is something close to like $30 billion. But right now it's trading at over $60 billion in valuation. And why do I not like it? A couple of reasons. Firstly, this is not NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a totally different animal from this. The kind of chips these guys make versus what NVIDIA makes is different. NVIDIA has been driven by AI. This is more driven by some mobile. They have talked about AI coming in, etc. But right now, that's not what their business looks like. Next thing is, the second biggest market is China. For some reason, they want to operate in China. They've got themselves a Chinese arm, which they own 10% each part, piece of, a tiny minority stake, which is about 10% or so of the company. And they have no ability to control that company. They have no voting rights, etc. It's all done by the Chinese individuals. And they've come out and they've said that they've been paid late in the past. And they've also come out and said that they don't even have a see-through in reality to what they actually are owed. And so they doubt that they are owed, or they've been paid what they are actually truly owed. And the next thing is that they've also complained about the fact that there's been some intellectual property theft by the Chinese division of some of the ARM stuff. They've sued, or there's been court cases going on between ARM and the Chinese operator that basically has run this company and has been the one that's been accused by ARM of taking advantage of them. And so far, the Chinese individual has won these cases. Look, China is not exactly the fairest country in the world when it comes to cases of law, especially when there's billions of dollars involved. And this person is quite strongly politically connected. So yeah, it has not been a great operation time for ARM in China. That being said, I still think there's a good business underlying this. My only question here is whether this business is worth the valuation the market's putting on it, and I don't think it is. I don't think we've seen the real AI coming into ARM yet. I don't think we've seen enough evidence that this company can do the kind of stuff that NVIDIA has been doing. And so we do. I think, if you bought it at the IPO, great news. But just be wary, that the company may reverse some of these gains. Because, like I said, they are not the same kind of company as NVIDIA. They do something a bit different from what NVIDIA does. And NVIDIA's model has created $1 trillion+ company. And just because this company is worth about 5% of what NVIDIA is, does not mean it's value for money. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to speaking to you guys again next week. Cheers.